and welcome to Books in Action. I'm Jen Latimer, and today I have with me Mandy Gonzalez. Mandy is an award-winning Broadway performer, singer, and creator of the Fearless Squad. You can currently find her in the role of Angelica in Hamilton, and I invited her here today to talk about her life as a writer. Hi, Mandy.
Hi.
How are you?
Jennifer. I'm good. I'm so excited to be here.
This is so fun. So for the audience, I am a little bit of a fangirl for Mandy, so
As well, me as for you
disclosure.
as well.
And so we have a mutual love of each other's work. So.
Exactly.
So for your first book, Fearless, I would love to talk about this today.
Yes.
We were introduced to 12-year-old Monica, and I've heard you talk about your connection to Monica, but many of the listeners may not know, right, some of the things I've been to, and I'd love if you just talk a little bit about like your inspiration for Monica.
Yes. So Monica Garcia is a 7th grader, and she has a love of singing and dreams of a life on Broadway. And she has this incredible talent, and her abuelita sees that talent. And it's really about Monica traveling with her abuelita from a small town in California to New York City because Monica gets a job as an understudy to the understudy of a new Broadway show. And it's
and
about...
I have to stop you right
yes,
there. The understudy to the understudy seems like such a fun little expression.
Oh, it is. Well, it does exist. And I didn't know that it was like an actual thing until I started on Broadway. And I was not the understudy to the understudy, but I was a standby. That was my first job on Broadway. I was a standby for Idina Menzel in the musical Aida. And then, so you have a standby who's kind of also an understudy. It just depends on how you categorize it. But so there's a standby, and then there's an understudy that's also in the ensemble, and then there's an understudy to that understudy in case that person goes down, who's like also off stage or in the ensemble. So you are always covered in any Broadway show. But that is definitely a true thing.
Well, I think when I saw Hamilton, which you were in, and I was sitting in the audience, just like very much sending you all my love, we actually saw the understudy to the understudy.
Yes, I'm sure you did.
And we were like, wow, we're like two removed. And he was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I'll take him any day. I don't know what the regular guy sounds like, but he was great.
Yes. No, it's like... there's so many people, especially in Hamilton, that are making their Broadway debuts, and a lot of those people start as the understudy to the understudy, and they start working their way up, and that's really how you, you pay your dues on Broadway.
Now, I was reading this when I read this the first time.
Yes.
So I always get a sense of your love of life in general, but then this book also feels like it's a love letter to New York. Certainly to Broadway. But what I thought was so interesting, and I don't know if you thought about this when you're writing, is like, chapter 1, New York, 24 days until opening night. And then, it's very much like there's sound, infused in the first few lines. You really get, in the sentences I can't speak, you get a sense of New York. Purposeful. I mean, I clearly feel like you love what you do and you love the city of New York City, so I just assume that's an easy question, but
Absolutely. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with New York. I'm obsessed with Broadway, and I've been that way since I was a kid. And that really started for me when I was really young, because both of my parents worked full-time, and I used to be babysat by my grandma, who loved Broadway musicals. And so she and I would listen to Broadway cast albums, and I fell in love with that world. And then we also watched movies together, like New York, a wonderful town. I became obsessed with Ethel Merman, Judy Garland, like all these big torch singers. And so it has been a part of my life. I was the kid that watched the Tony Awards every year, and in California, that was my, window into this world. And so when I finally got here, and you walk into Times Square for the first time, and you're, this Broadway baby that just I was 19, I think, when I first came to New York. It was so magical and everything. And there was like glitter on the streets,
Right.
on Broadway. You don't think that that's really what it is, but it was like, oh my gosh, there is glitter on the streets and gum and trash and all these other things.
Everything else.
It definitely, like in the book, it doesn't smell like bubble gum, but it's there.
Right.
But it's this magical place that I want kids, when they read this, to also fall in love with. And so when they come to New York, they have a sense of different places to visit.
Okay.
So they can look for Monica and for the Fearless Squad.
Well, I have to say another thing, and I don't know if you think about this, because your daily life is going in and out of New York City.
Yes.
I am happy for this as well, because what I realized when I became an educator and I worked in the schools every day and listening to children, how many of our children, now we live very close to New York City, do not go in. Right?
Yeah.
They may not leave the few blocks around their house. They may not go to downtown Maplewood. Right? Or downtown South Orange. So what I loved about this is that it's a middle grade book, but again, it's the text is very easy to read. Like the spacing is friendly to children, and it also teaches them stuff. So I feel like it's teaching them about this place that's not that far from them. And now children will come up and say, do you have any other books on Broadway? Do you have any books on performance? And yours is one of the ones we give. There's not that many writers that sort of show us this world.
Right.
So again, it's a place of joy.
Absolutely. And I think for me, being a kid on the weekends, the place that I would go with my mom was the library. And I know we've talked about this, and it was the place where my mom would say, you can get anything that you want and you have to give it back. But it was this world, and looking for books about theater and looking for characters. It was so important for me in creating this series that I really write about things that I knew, and to write about my own story. And being a Latina in the Broadway community, we're here, and it's a very exciting thing. And so I hope that kids can see themselves and see that there is a place for me in this world, in theater, whether it's in your high school or on Broadway or in your community theater, that there is something magical about it. So I'm hoping that kids see themselves.
I feel like every other moment I'm talking about kids, like, mirrors and windows, right? Like it's important to read about characters that don't look like you, that you get a sense of what other people's experiences are, like to see that everything is possible.
Yeah.
I want to shift now to your brand new book. I was going to call it Fearless 2, but it's not. It's Boulevard of Dreams.
Yes.
And I love that Monica's still in the book, but that she takes a little bit of a backseat then to Relly, right?
Yes, Relly Morton.
To Relly. And I have so many questions about the writing of this book, and the writing of Relly. What was it like to write in a different voice?
When I first started writing stories for the Fearless Squad, it kind of started about, I would say, 10 years ago. And the first stories that I wrote were for Relly, and in Relly's voice. And Relly is inspired by my dear friend, my best friend, Darrell Grand-Moultrie. And we met when I was the understudy in Aida, and he was a swing, which means he covers about 5 different parts in the ensemble. It's insane. But when you're young, you could just do whatever. Why not? And we shared a mirror because they put us all together, understudies and swings, in the same room. And anytime somebody would say something, we would look at each other in the mirror and kind of exchange glances, and we immediately became best friends. And the thing that I love about Broadway and the Broadway community is that everybody is from somewhere else. And their story is completely different to how they got to where they got to. And Darrell's story was so different than mine. Being a young girl from California, Darrell grew up in Harlem. And so being his friend, I was able to learn about where he came from. And it inspired me so much because he's Oh, he's just such an incredible, incredible person, incredible performer. He is now one of the most world-renowned choreographers. But his story is a beautiful one, and so it was so important for me to put Relly in where he grew up, which is in Harlem,
right,
with his mom and his brother, which is not the same for Darrell, but it was exciting because it was like this this new character that was full of all these different stories. And so it was fun because I could delve into this other part of myself and of my thought process for entertainment and go there with him. And
did you share some of it with him? Did you surprise? Was he like?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the first story,
He's like a bit of your muse in a way.
He definitely is. I never thought about it that way, but he definitely is. And the first story I wrote for Relly, it's called Relly's Shoes, and it was a children's for much younger kids. And that was the first story that I did, and my friend Jason Rosenberg, who's an artist, did the illustrations for it. And I sent it to him, and he was like, "Oh, this is really cool! Like, good job!" And then I sent him Fearless when I was done, with this book, and he was like, "Oh, I thought it was going to be like the other book. Like, I really need to take time and like read this." And he just is, because I said, "Is it okay that Because everybody, when you walk around Harlem with Darrell, everybody's like, Relly, that's him.
Yeah.
And he grew up as a dancer, and I would ask him, because of, movies like Billy Elliot and things like that, was it hard for you, like, to grow up as a dancer?
I was just going to say, like, what kind of dancing did he gravitate towards?
I think he gravitated... No, I think that there was always, what he would tell me is people were always dancing, like in his family.
Right.
It was like family functions and things like that. And I said, people make fun of you? Because somebody, again, like my grandmother with me, saw a talent and put me into lessons. He had a teacher that put him into lessons and an after-school program for him. And so he could learn ballet and jazz and tap and all of those things. But I said, was it hard for you? Was there a struggle? And he said, no, everybody supported me because I was good. And that in itself, I mean, that's just, it paints all these like colors of a story. And so for me, it was so important that the community was a part of Relly's story.
Right.
The community and his teachers were all a part of, because you can see it does take a village. To achieve a dream,
right? There's
at
least in the plot line, as I won't obviously give it away. But like every good novel, right? There's some struggle, and maybe not everybody is as excited about certain career paths. And I can imagine that's true of any career in the arts, right? There are those that might say perhaps something a little different would be more, I don't even know, safe.
Absolutely, and I think. That's one of the questions that I get asked the most from parents, from young people that are looking at a career in the arts or not sure about a career in the arts. They say, well, what should my backup plan be? That's always that's backup plan B. That's a very thing. But, and I say, your journey will come to you. And that's something that my mom told me when I was first moving to New York. She gave me the Pablo Neruda book, and it said, "Traveler, there is no trail. The path is made by walking."
I'm going to cut you off, Rick, but we're going to come back to this. And Pablo Neruda, who is a favorite of mine.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And just hang out with us. We're going to be right back after this quick break for Books in Action.
It's an onion.
Hello and welcome back to Books in Action. I'm Jen Latimer and I'm here with my guest today, Mandy Gonzalez. Before the break, we were talking a little bit, I know I cut you off, about Pablo Neruda, and I know we were talking about your mother, and we can get that thought again.
Yes, absolutely. You know, like I said, it takes a village, and for my friend Darrell, it was his family and his neighborhood. For me, my family played a big part in my journey. And when I was leaving for New York, my mom gave me a book of Pablo Neruda poems. And one of the poems, it said, they were all translated, and it said, "Traveler, there is no trail, the path is made by walking." And I've really held on to that because I think when I do talk to young people, a lot of them will ask me, well, how do you do it?
Right.
How do you get there? And what if do I need a backup plan? And what happens if I can't make money or make a living as an artist? But and one of the things that I tell them is that saying yes is such a powerful thing. It may not be exactly what you think it should be, but saying yes can open so many doors for you, as long as it's safe and like a safe thing. But that's where your journey begins.
Right.
And as your journey begins, and I tell parents this too, as their journey begins, it starts to open up as to where they should be. You know, you may start on the stage, but then you may realize, oh, I really like behind the scenes more. I like tech. I like to teach. I like these kind of things. And that's what I say to young people, is that there's a place for them in the arts.
Right.
You know, it may not be exactly what you think it's going to be, but it's going to be the place where you're supposed to be, and you're needed. And so, and I think that's something that we learned in the pandemic, is that it really was the arts, for me, maybe because I'm in the arts, but that brought people together, you know?
Oh, no.
I remember when Hamilton came out on Disney Plus in the summer, I think it was 2020, and it was like everybody was watching it.
We all
the
sat around
neighbors,
the TV.
you know, everybody had, you know, the screen outside, and everybody's watching it together. And all of a sudden, it was something that we were sharing.
Yes.
And I don't know. For me, the arts during the pandemic were so uplifting and gave a lot of hope. Like we were talking earlier about seeing concerts that people, our favorite bands, would put on, and just paying, you know, the $25 for.
I want a live stream.
Yeah, I did so many live streams. I performed in a lot of them, but I also, you know, bought a lot of tickets, and it was something that, like, oh, the arts are so needed.
I do want to say something before we move on from Fearless.
Yes.
Because, and I don't know if this was purposeful, and I don't really care, but I want to say thank you. This is called Books in Action. On page 140 and 141, you have the children, they go to a library because they're on a quest for knowledge. And I laughed out loud as they were trying to figure out how a librarian could possibly answer a question without Google, basically.
Right.
And, you know, we just search the internet and bam, hundreds, thousands of solutions are here. What happens if there's no internet in the 50s? How would a librarian know where to point them? And I just thought it was such a great reminder that we can find information without, you know, the internet.
Yeah.
And that there are people out there who are experts in this. And it's just every once in a while, like there was a book recently, I don't know if you read Starfish, that came out in the middle grade.
I haven't read it yet, no.
It's a very powerful novel. But again, it's about fitting in and being accepted and finding a safe place. And she also mentions, the author mentions how like the librarian is always there, right? And it's these moments that in these times, which are not always book friendly, library friendly, school friendly, that I just want to say thank you. I'm going to use my time here to say thank you, because that was just a lovely little,
thank you.
little moment.
Like I said, it's the library was one of my, and is still one of my favorite places to go and to lose myself in a book, but also to ask a question and to say, oh, what do you recommend? And, and I find that as well with my daughter. And when I go to the children's section, and what do you recommend? And, you know, somebody always has an opinion and a recommendation that I would never think of. And so, but even when my daughter was young and we lived in Brooklyn, we would go to the library all the time and we would go to the classes and
Oh, I used to shop the story times.
oh, story time was the best.
I had like 5 different libraries. I'm like, this one has a really good one for music, and then this one always picks interesting books, and this one does like little puppet things, but I am not doing at home. That was not my
South
thing.
Orange Library was my absolute favorite place to go for story time, and we went. I think we went every week.
Yeah.
As my daughter was when we first moved out here, and it was just a place that she could learn about new stories.
It's a safe place.
It is a safe place.
It's a safe place. Now, I said I was going to move on, but what was it like working with a co-writer?
You know, I
collaborator.
met a collaborator. It was incredible. I met Brittany Thurman, as you had said before. What was it like, you know, to write for Relly? I knew so much about Monica, and it was so close to me that it was really important for me to collaborate with someone on this book. And when my agent introduced me to Brittany, it was like magic. It's like we had been friends forever and we had never met. And this book was really, I guess, created and written during the pandemic. So it was all through Zoom.
I was going to say, because did you get to
emails and, you know, and then we finally got to meet, I guess in 2021, we finally got to go to Schubert Alley, which is where the kids go through the pothole and
the smells.
Yes, and come up the other
I
side.
I almost wanted to pinch my nose. As I'm reading the descriptions, I was like, "Oh, you are not going underneath the city." Yes, you are. Oh,
but
you're
I've
stepping in
always
things.
been curious because I've always been curious what's underneath Broadway, because there's so many stories. New York, it's like layers upon layers. Just
maybe the
living
Phantom
there.
of the Opera is down there.
Absolutely,
somewhere.
absolutely. But Jimmy the Doorman is, you know, Jimmy Onions. He is the doorman at the Richard Rodgers Theater, and he sits in this. In real life, he sits in this old elevator shaft. But whenever I would leave, I would always see this little opening underneath the elevator shaft, and I would wonder what's underneath there, and what if there was like a secret tunnel that you could go to that only Jimmy knew about? Yeah, you know, because he knows everything and he knows everybody.
He's been around.
Exactly, and so, but when we finally got to meet, it was like meeting somebody that I had known forever, and so I feel so lucky that we got to work on this together.
No, especially throw the pandemic in there. I just feel like it's one more hurdle and one more, I don't want to say complication, but it's just something different.
Something
that you have
totally
to,
different.
You know, and we're not prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I learned throughout, you know, this time, is that you just got to go with the flow. And like I said, your path will open up to you in the journey as long as you say yes. It's all a part of it.
Now, did you enjoy the audiobook experience? Because you are the narrator of Fearless.
Yes.
And so as I was listening to it, and I'm trying to I'm imagining you sitting there with your microphone and just you know, I think it's so fascinating. I was once able to go to Audible's headquarters, and they had people recording, and they let me sort of watch a little bit of the experience. I got to, when they weren't recording, I was able to go in and see the rooms, and it's just such it's performing.
Yeah, it is.
But it's performing to a microphone.
Yes.
And to an unknown audience.
It was hard for me at first because I'm such an expressive person. When I talk with my hands. I move my hair.
And no one's watching you.
Yeah, it's just part of how I express myself. And that microphone that you use when you are doing an audiobook is so sensitive. It picks up on everything. So my producer, Allison Light, would always be like, okay, let's go back. You know, I would always clear my throat. I'm a singer, so I'm always like, you know, doing those kind of things. So I learned a lot about the process, but it was so much fun to read it out loud and to become the characters, and because all of those things are in your head.
Right.
And, you know, I do talk out a little bit as I'm creating, but at the same time, to hear it all together is really fun. And then to go back and do the second book, it was like, oh, I had to remember and listen back from the engineer what I did and what Hudson's voice sounds like, and you know, to go back there and for the new adventure, but also to do new voices for Bobby and for Grandpa Gregory. It was so fun.
Well, you have to remember, because I remember when I read Harry Potter, the entire series, to my son,
Yes.
And I would have been working all day, and then I came home, and then I would try to do this brogue of Hagrid and imagine what Hagrid would sound like, and he'd say, "Mommy, that's not what he sounded like last night." And I'd say, "Oh, so
See, kids know.
I don't even know what I said last night. I couldn't tell you the accent. I don't even have that accent. It's just all in my head."
No,
So-
kids know. It's like Maribel liked that book, I Want My Hat Back.
Yes.
And
that is writing genius.
Genius. And I remember when I would read that book to her and I wouldn't do the voices of the frog and all of the different, characters. And she would say, "Oh, can you do it like you did it last night?" And so it is. Kids know.
Yeah.
They remember. And so it was so much fun to recreate and to be able to do the audiobook. It was so much fun.
Now, this is a question I was thinking about. So, you have this entire musical career, right? Beyond just being on Broadway, you're also a performer, a singer. When you're writing, do you have a soundtrack, right? Like, do you have the songs that would be playing in their theater performances? Do you have? Sometimes an author will say, "I was listening to this as I was writing," or is that extra noise? Do you need sort of a peaceful Zen kind of writing experience?
I don't think so, because I think that I work well in the chaos of things, and maybe it's just being a mom. I don't know, but the reason that I love living here is that I can still hear the train for New York, and I can still feel like it's so close to me. And here you hear different things like leaf blowers and those kind of things, but that doesn't bother me.
Right.
It's just so I like that. For me, music definitely plays a part in this, and I think the readers will know why. In the first book, I ended up writing songs for all the interludes in between the chapters, because those songs just came to me.
I was going to say, it has to be. Like, that's a part of you I don't think you can take out.
Absolutely, and they came to me in the character's voice, so it was so much fun, And then with Relly, going back to the 1950s, listening to those songs, but also just remembering, because I had, like I said, I had a grandmother who listened to so much music with me, and she had a player piano that you would have to use the pedals in order to play, and there were all these old songs that I would listen to. So those songs, and growing up and learning tap dance at a young age, and working with a teacher that I had, John Zerby, you listen to all that old music, and then, having this obsession with Gregory Hines in my teenage years, and then watching all of those old movies and learning about the Nicholas brothers and different people that, influenced tap dancing, it's all in my head. So I think the music never stops.
Right.
It's just part of it. You're a musician. It's like... It's a constant, and I think sometimes when I'm driving in the car, that's probably why I listen to podcasts, to that's how I quiet it, by those like audiobooks and things like that. But otherwise, there's a continuous medley that's in my head.
And I feel like you might...
I don't know if that sounds really strange, but...
No, I don't... Too much quiet unsettles me, so I often find that there's just different things. Either I'm hearing the songs, I'm singing the songs, I'm listening to the songs, I'm doing all of it. It's a certain, I'm definitely, I lean pro noises and head.
Yes.
You know how to say that.
It's just what it is.
I have to tell you, Mandy Gonzalez, this has been a fabulous 30 minutes, and I thank you for coming to Books in Action. I'm Jen Latimer, and for Books in Action and our guest Mandy Gonzalez, thank you so much. Enjoy.